first. It's
Precisely.
not my first rodeo on these things.
Not your first rodeo, exactly. Perfect, Tiago. Well, thank you so much for jumping on the Scooter Space podcast. Obviously, what we'll be discussing today is obviously security and data privacy by design and by default, and how you can actually win clients with InfoSec and data privacy. So, obviously, before anything, Tiago, are you right just to give us a quick introduction to yourself, please?
Sure. So I'm Tiago Rosado. I'm Portuguese, but been in UK and living in UK for the past 9 years. I work within the information security space for 25, almost 26 years now, and also work within the data privacy remit. And I've worked in very different verticals, from penetration testing companies to telecoms, to fintechs, to software houses, to virtual data rooms. I've went through a very different areas of business where I gathered all the experience that I have today, pretty much.
Okay. Okay, and obviously, just a quick question on that before we delve in is: have you, because you've worked in so many different sectors over your time, as information security and data privacy, has it been pretty consistent throughout the different sectors? Have you seen, or have you found that one sector is way more ahead of another sector, for example?
Yeah, for sure. So, if these highly regulated markets, because again, it is a pressing and a demand from both the clients or the government or organizations that they need to comply with. I will say that some sectors like fintechs or likes of virtual data rooms will be, let's say, much more strict in terms of security and data privacy, for sure. Yes. But
Yeah.
it's in general as a client demand or a market demand, not of a willingness of the companies themselves. Don't get me wrong; all of them will do their best, but I think we're still very reactive when it comes to
Yep.
this instead of being proactive across.
Yep. Yeah, and that difference between the two. So. It probably leads in nicely. So, why are we sort of discussing this today? Why are we, just to reiterate what me and Tiago are going through? So, why are we going through sort of how we can win clients with InfoSec and data privacy? Is it because is there a need out there? Is there is there a potential hole in the market where if it's done in the right way, it can really be leveraged? Is there a clear fault with how sort of you can actually win business with information security? Why are we sort of bringing this to light today, Tiago?
I think there are three key aspects of bringing this and this discussion that we're having. One is the clients themselves. I think as a client, regardless if you are talking about your private data as a consumer or you're part of organization, you're buying a service, people are becoming more demanding about what are the things that you're doing in terms of information security, what are the things that you're doing in terms of data privacy. Are you going to deal with either my personal data, either my client's data? I suspect that very few people would 5 years ago will ask for a DSAR to any company out there. Today is bread and butter. If you don't have an automated system to provide a data subject access request to your clients, you'll find yourself in a bit of late works and nights around that. The market is also different. So if you do a little bit of a PESTEL analysis or a political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental, you'll see a lot of changes. War in Ukraine has brought cyber warfare to different levels. Even just now, before we start this conversation, I was reading that Microsoft was pointing to the Iranian government as the key threat actors that are attacked them recently. And you see other companies, Lastpass, for example, recently being breached. Recently, also documents from the Pentagon saying that the Americans are even spying on their own allies because of Ukraine. So this political situation brings that to an extent. That all excuse that companies are too small to be a target, that does not exist. Everyone is a target right now. So picking up on LastPass, how they managed to get in was using a software Plex that is used for a video or a media center platform to one of their developers. So it gives you to the lengths and to the point where any attacker will go to try to get into a company. So no one is safe. No one was ever safe. If you look into the financial sector, for example, you have now DORA. So the Digital Operational Resilience Act, which is not a framework, is a legal requirement, will be in place on the 17th of January 2025, if I recall properly. And this will be an obligation for anyone that operates within the financial space and their suppliers to prove that they have the necessary resilience, meaning that in terms of security, in terms of data privacy, it will be much stricter. So the stress tests are not just focused on the money part, but they also be focused on the cyber resilience and how the chain of suppliers to your bank, to your lenders, and everyone that is involved in providing the service will need to prove the resilience. And that's just a few. You have the new United States National Cybersecurity Strategy that now shifts the responsibilities from the users to the software providers, regardless if they are small, if they are big, and you need to act upon it. The same with critical infrastructure. We'll see a major refurbishment in terms of the security and how CISA is pushing the resilience of critical infrastructures within the US space to be more resilient. So, for example, now also SEC approved the new requirements to address cybersecurity risks. So any company that is within within the financial markets or is listed in NASDAQ or on the Wall Street, they will need to comply with these requirements. And of course, when all this comes to boil, that trickles down the chain. It is said that it needs to be the regulators pushing this agenda instead of the companies saying, hey, we owe this to our clients, but it's the reality. Also, you are on the brink to have a new US federal data privacy law, very close to the California CPRA, not the CCPA, but the CPRA, that will just came to start in January the 1st, 2023. CPRA went into functions and is a data privacy law. It's much more strict than the CCPA, very close to the EU GDPR and to the UK GDPR. So all this is being pushed because, again, everyone recognizes that companies are not doing their best efforts to become more resilient and to put in the front or in the beginning data privacy and security, which I think they are very intertwined. You cannot have data privacy without having proper security. And if you're doing proper security, then by default, you will have data privacy. So it's a win-win situation in here. And going back to the original point, why this is so important. If you are doing any business, think on, I cannot see any vertical where security and data privacy is not important in any aspect. Think from water supplying to healthcare and our beloved NHS and all the problems that NHS, for example, had with non-PETIA. All of this or anything, regardless.
Well, if I can come in on that, Tiago, actually, just because it's a point that that has come to light on some previous of the Security Space podcasts. For example, that low hanging fruit, them shops on the high street. Obviously, they have a lot of sort of card transactions on the daily, whatnot. But security just might not be at the forefront of their mind. So you say there that obviously, I can't think of any vertical. Obviously, it's all important, but it's all about in terms of the priorities for some. What would your advice be to that them streets, them shops on the high street where it's like, look, you are kind of at risk here because you are the low-hanging fruit if you don't take security and data privacy seriously?
I think those are already being covered. So most of the payment card, and if you go into the PCI DSS requirements, and they're quite good. They're not excellent, but they're quite good. And any payment card system that you have on high street, and nowadays you are pretty much almost a cashless society in most places. Everything is card touch based. All of those equipments are really resilient. So that is not a problem. If you're looking just on the side of the payment side, that is covered by PCI DSS. And in general, all the equipments that are there. They need to comply with PCI DSS requirements, and they're quite sturdy. So
Mm.
there is no issue in there. Now, when you start collecting people's email addresses
Mm.
for marketing purposes, and that you see quite a few companies out there that will give you a discount if you provide your data, and then if you click one, I would question the legality of that, but that's a different story. Let's not dive into that. That's another podcast on its own, I suspect. But is when you start collecting that data, and usually those are not small companies. Those are big franchise or even with franchise companies out there that will have the means to actually protect that data.
Mm.
Because if they're using that, selling it or using for internal purposes and for their market experience, they need to have in place the necessary security to deal with all that personal data that they are collecting for their own purposes, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I don't see, again, why those are not an issue for those and why they should not protect. Again,
Okay.
if you're talking about 100, 200 people on a database, that's one thing. When you're talking about thousands or even tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands, is when things get really complicated and much
Mm.
more, let's say, potentially can go really, really bad way.
Yeah, yeah, defo. And so, just linking it back to
Mm.
the topic in question, then. So obviously, I've always seen, and everybody I speak to, sometimes it's about that, security being enablers, and how we can sort of like. A lot of time it is changing the culture around security because
Mhm.
security can be seen as blockers. So obviously with this topic in question, you know you've kind of put it in the right light in the sense of like okay, how can we use it to actually win business. So how is it literally a case of changing people's mindset about it, or is it a little bit more under the bonnet about that? What do you think to that?
I think it is definitely changing the culture. So as you said it very well, I have experienced pushbacks in different parts of the business. Why we need to do this? Well, if you don't understand that, what our security or the data privacy people are trying to do is maintaining and making sure that tomorrow you still have a business, and we have to have other conversations
Mm.
on top of this. But definitely is always a pushback. I think the initial model. Um, where people see information security and or data privacy as blockers, as the police officers of the company, as the ones that will just go to you and push senseless policies and procedures
Mm.
that look great on paper, but no one is following it. Everyone is circumventing from the top to the bottom. Everyone in the company is almost like a tick in the box exercise for the auditors. I think this is shifting, and it's shifting
Mm.
because people um, are perceiving that security and data privacy are actually their friends and can save them a lot of time and a lot of money in the near future. And I think GDPR, the changes that had to come with GDPR, um, look at that, but also because the posture of security people in general is changing.
Okay.
I think this, when you have a problem, I always say that you need two parts on a problem, right? It's not just a security issue, it's not just a culture of the company issue, it's a combination of both. One, security people need to change their approach and not just, you need to do this because I'm telling you so. People don't work like that. We're all
Yep.
humans. But if I go to you, hey, Nick, I will need you to change your passwords for something really long and really sturdy, because along with 2FA, that what will enable us to maintain the necessary levels of security, because you have access to really important things within the company. If I tell you this, you'll be okay. If I just send you the policy, I read that and you need to comply, right? So I think
Yep.
there's this combination. So if you want to change mentalities, if you want to change the posture, one, you should listen to people that you hired, because if you hire them and they are really subject matter experts, the top leadership needs to listen to them, but also
Hmm.
they need to set the example. I think we all know that sometimes throughout our life history, we always find someone that you need to do as I tell you, not as I do, kind of approach.
Yep. Yep.
And that, of course, creates a problem because everyone will look at what you're doing and not what you're saying. So if you are the CEO or the CFO and you constantly just ignore the policies and the procedures that the information security, the compliance people, the risk people are trying to put into place to the safeguard of the business, then you have a problem. You
Mm.
have a really big one. When you enforce them and actually expect everyone across to do this, then you're doing the right thing. So there's the human factor is always the one that you need to cater for. Likewise, if you the people inside of the company or within a particular group, let's say I have a very interesting clashes, let's call it clashes or challenges with development teams.
Yep.
I have both spectrums. I had development teams, they were absolutely fantastic. They went on board with me. I explained why we need to do things. They bring more their experience. We chat, we have the conversations, we organize and we go. On the other side, I had the development teams just, no, this is not development, this is security. I'll say, well, if you are a driver, I expect you to drive securely, that you have
Yep.
extensive driving. You don't go into the streets driving a cab the same way that you drive a car in a rally, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, this and that. And we are not, because people are not comfortable. End of the day, everyone that if you are trying to do something that is not within your usual remit, like myself, if you sit me with the finance people, for example, Tiago, now you need to understand how this works. I will be okay. I will do it, but I will need a bit of
Yep.
handholding. You need to explain to me what is the objective. You need to explain to me what are the mechanisms, and we'll get there. So I think there is this approach. But again, we are all human, and some people will try to do it the way that they always did. They don't
Mm.
want to change anything. They will not challenge it. And we all know how that ends and does not end well for them. Others will embrace the changes. Of course, they will be a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning, but you will embrace the changes and go for it. So, for example, things like ChatGPT that we have now very mixed emotions about it, always coming, taking a lot of people's jobs, or no, this will be an answer of people's jobs. I think is the second one. It will be, if anything, will be a really fantastic tool
Mm.
with some issues, of course, but will be a fantastic tool to help anyone from the security people to the developers to the business. So there is no doubt in my mind it will be a fantastic
Mm.
add to the companies with the necessary safeguards that, in my humble opinion, are not there yet. But again, that will be another problem around data
Mm.
privacy and security and how you are giving information to a platform that you have no control, you don't know exactly what's going on in there, who would have access to the information that you're sending
Mm.
to ChatGPT and OpenAI.
Yeah.
So still, it's a little bit of a turmoil on that section.
Absolutely. So obviously, yeah, it's the changes that obviously, yeah, we can kind of help businesses, yeah, grow, which is what you're saying. So now, just a point on, just to kind of flip it on its head a little bit, and how sort of information security can actually sort of not work to the detriment of a company sort of winning business, but a company that has been publicly, hit with a cyber attack. Um, just how damaging can that actually be? Recently, well, at the time of this recording, God, what's been the most latest one? Probably JD off the top of my head, which was about 2-3 weeks ago now. There probably has been definitely more recent, but just obviously, just how damaging can it be to a reputational brand?
I think will be it will depend a lot. So depend about exactly what is the business is doing for a living. So for example, I just seen recently that Pizza Hut and KFC were breached.
Mm.
Okay, so you imagine the amount of data that's going there. In my perspective, and what we're seeing in terms of costs, if it is something within the healthcare space, or we're dealing something with more sensitive data like healthcare, like banking information, the impact will be bigger.
Yep.
Okay. So, for example, if you are talking about a health insurance company or an hospital, for example, within the US market, the cost will be really high. One HIPAA high trust will make sure that you will need to get a really nasty fine. But on top of that, all the necessary remediation and the compensation, or even the legal compensations that you need to provide to people that, for example, now is disclosed that they have HIV or cancer or any other complication will be much higher than, say, for example, that your phone number or your email address were retrieved out of, let's say, for example, KFC. Okay. I think there is a distinction. The Ponemon Institute provided quite a few weeks ago the data from 2022, and the numbers of per individual, the cost per data breach will vary between roughly $250 up to 80 cents, if I recall properly. So is the different brackets depending what is the industry that is involved. Now, in my mind, is very simple. All companies will be breached. Okay, Nick. Let's put that on a table and try to think that companies will not be breached. Every single company, they, if they know or not, that's a different story. But in different ways, I suspect that most companies, regardless what they do, they have been breached or have a serious security incident. Now, the amount of data that you can retrieve out of that, or the escalation to your suppliers, might be the difficult or the more tricky bit to the scenarios. But I do think it will become slightly more normalized, the data breach, unfortunately, before it gets better. So, for example, you have now French government just passed a law, and this is a law, that you need to report to the authorities before you activate your cyber insurance. Now, this is a massive step, because if this catch fire and it spreads across all the countries, every time that you have a data breach, you will need to report it, because no one in the cyber security or the cyber insurance side will cover it. The other one is Lloyd's of London is having negotiations with the insurance companies that provide the cyber insurance directly to those about things like act of wars and cyber attacks from state-sponsored or government-sponsored attackers. One, how do you know if it is a state sponsor? Because don't get me wrong, most of the very sophisticated attacks that we have seen, that's really not that sophisticated, right? Someone made a mistake and you were caught. It is good PR that you said it was a sophisticated cyber attack, so no one hammers your security or the liability of your company.
Yeah.
Very few. Lastpass was a very sophisticated one. But most of them, when you start looking at what happened to the companies, if you had the time to go through the technical aspects of it, I would say that the better vulnerability management program would have minimized that or even prevented that. Now, saying this, all the changes that we are seeing within this side of cyber insurance, the obligation to report it to your authorities, even in EU now. So you do not just report a breach within one EU country. If you have people from other countries, you need to report to every single country's data privacy organization in there. Meaning, used to, for example, if you are being operating in UK, you had a data breach in here, you go to the ICO, you report it. Nowadays, if you have a data breach in France, but you have clients from all over the EU space, you need to go to every single one of them where you have clients from and report the same. And you have to deal with all of this. I think that is a bit too much, in my humble opinion. That should be centralized in a country where you have, let's say, the headquarters, or when was the main data breach, because if you're dealing with a data breach, you are already overwhelmed. Then you need to report this to 23 or 24 countries now. Is not helping. I think the EU, the ENISA and the EU authorities will need to create a much more centralized way to just report in one country and then say, okay, we have people impacted in all these countries part of the EU.
Yeah.
In that centralized one. But definitely, until today, I don't know any company that went bankrupt because of data breach. But you will see the fluctuations of shares of Lastpass, they're public. You can infer from that what will be the implications and the losses that they have, and the amount of clients also that they will have as soon as they provide the next financial report to the SEC. You'll be able to understand, and I suspect it is big. It is big.
Yeah, therefore. And what would some of the risks actually be to organisations that, that necessarily just, if company A is using their information security and their data privacy as a way and a means of winning clients, as opposed to company B who don't, they just will just kind of like not prioritize security and just go all off their marketing or off their economics or something along them lines. Where would company A face up against company B, and what are the risks are company B doing by ignoring that security side?
I can give you my experience and experience of a few people, quite a few, dozens of information security officers, CISOs, heads of, and what we share. When you do a proper due diligence on your suppliers, and I've done this constantly for the last 15 years, there's always two things that you are trying to understand. Are they a bringer of bigger risks? And where are they in their security and data privacy journey? That's absolutely fine that a startup will be within a certain level and you are expecting that brings a bigger risk to your organization. Now, if they show that they progressively went through better and better every time, then might, considering the cost, be worth taking it. Other scenarios, for example, I have informed my management that I do not think that this supplier, but everyone is using it. I'm going to give you my judgment. So I'll provide information that for these reasons, I don't think that this supplier is good for us. It presents us a massive risk. Their security and data privacy is not up to spec, and it brings a massive risk compared to the other client, the other supplier, sorry, that is doing their best. They already have ISO 27001. They're also looking in being ISO 27701, the extension into data privacy certified. But these ones, everyone is using them. Well, we are not everyone, right? We're doing things with the proper due diligence. Now you make a decision. The prices are the same. They provide exactly the same service. As a cost, it will be exactly the same. This one does not bring any massive risks to the company. This does. Now you make the decision. And of course, they were keen to just take the other company out and embrace, even if the one that we went for was, let's say, less known in the market, and the other one, but everyone uses this. Well, everyone is putting their heads out there for you, and you're not even concerned about it, which is considering that you operate in a payment space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worrying. It is worrying, and not just me that's sharing these worries, and that's why you have these new regulations. A lot of regulators from the UK, from the EU, from the US are really putting the game up because in a day and age where everything is interconnected, now with Open API, for example, project, we even have interconnections between banks, and not just between banks, but between lenders, between KIC companies. They will have access to all this information with all these APIs, have access to pretty much whoever enrolls for this.
Yep.
Banking system is really making a strong push to have really good security throughout, because once you are part in the system, if you are a startup within the fintech space, let's say, and if you are breached, it's not just your data that is breached. You have access to that fintech, then you'll have access to pretty much every single API that you will be consuming from any bank, any lender. You can imagine how big this can grow very quickly.
And to kind of surmise then, Tiago, is what would you, if I had to put you right in a box and just kind of round this all up, how do you win clients with information security then, as a nice sort of bow on top of the present, if I had to kind of get you to kind of surmise everything that we've kind of gone through today?
I think one, understanding exactly what are your risks, and the sooner the better that, for example, your sales team or your marketing team understands that how can we bring security, because traditional security is always seen as an expenditure.
Yep.
Right? You just the money pit that you throw money to potentially sort some problem that you only see if it happens.
Yeah, exactly. Just in case. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not. It is seen this way, and I'm really glad that most of the leadership teams out there are seeing this differently. But let's say, for example, I'm a software company, right? I will always look at how would I audit them or how would I perceive a new supplier from the eyes of the colleagues from security, data privacy, risk compliance within this sector, or even legally. So the more information and the better information provided around this out of the bat, my experience is, and I've trained different teams in different verticals. But if you already have, let's say, a pack prepared in terms of security, what are you doing? What are the things that you are putting in place in terms of compliance? You're going for the ISOs, you're going for the NIST. What are the things that you are doing, and what are your plans? People react really good, really well to this. Okay, the reaction from the client side is often very surprised because most of the times they will need to ask for this information. It is a struggle. But if you provide this out of the bat, 90% of your sales is done. All the blockers that we talked about, even within the sales side, will be gone because they fully understand what is going on, what are the risks that you bring, and don't try to sugarcoat things. There is no point. People on the
Yep.
other side are intelligent, or even sometimes more intelligent than you are, and they have access to information that sometimes you don't know. But just be honest. We are here, even if you are a startup, we are here. Our plans are to do this. These are the steps. And if you explain this to a CISO, to a chief risk officer, or anyone with side of the company, okay, they'll understand. Okay, you are a startup still, but you have a solid plan in there.
Yep.
In terms of security, data privacy, you will not bring more problems to me. You are going to solve problems. So, and working with your clients, of course, what are the requirements? Can you adjust them to your products? These little big things makes you always thrive. Always listen to what my clients would like because they'll give you one great insights on their own very specific market or their very specific needs. But on top of that, I can have a really good discussion with our security people and understand what will be the features that they would like to see in place or what will be the technologies that they want to operate or integrate. And if I pass that to my development team, then it's a win-win for everyone.
Exactly. Tiago, thank you so much for your time today. I feel like we only scratched the surface of what we actually could have gone into. So I might
Yes.
be knocking on your door for another episode quite soon, mate. But if anybody would like to ask Tiago any questions on what we'll sort of discuss today, I'll get all of his information, obviously, in the details for this description video below. But other than that, Tiago, thank you so much for your time.